when there are 500,000 refugees, not the handful that were picked up yesterday on the Kent coast, but 500,000 refugees trying to get to this island because they need a share of the food and water that's here. When that's happening because of climate change, as is quite likely to be within the next few years of our lives, how are we going to deal with that? Either we let them in and say, of course, welcome all strangers, or we say, no, you stay out. And the only way, because we are fundamentally, I think, such good and kind and connected people, the only way we can do that is by making them other. And we've had a whole inheritance of that, especially in Britain. You know, the racism, the imperialism, we know these people are other. The darker they are, the easier it is. They come from North Africa, they're Muslims, whatever it is, whatever excuse we'll find, we can other them and say they're people who we can slightly dehumanise them, and therefore we can turn a blind eye when the army is sent to keep them out, and then when the army starts shooting them, we can turn a blind eye. And then what happens is those people organise and start to shoot back. And then we get into a war or a civil war. And then we go down and we don't deal with the climate crisis and we all die. That's what will happen if we go along that path. If we go along the path of fascism and say, okay, we're gonna shut all our borders, and this country we're going to now decide, and all the Bremainers and the Moaners and the progressive types and those people, we're going to clamp down now, we're going to get it back to some kind of controlled, orderly situation and look after ourselves, which is the trend at the moment. If we do that, we won't unite to act on climate change, and we'll all die. If we start to struggle between countries, if we start to get too involved in, well, who was right and who was wrong with this, and should they be going through there, and isn't that oil needed more by us than by them, and all the rest of it, we'll get nuclear exchanges. And if we get nuclear exchanges in the next decade, we'll all die. What I'm saying to you is, unless we actually find a way that does spread kindness and compassion, we are doomed. It's no longer like kindness is a nice thing, wouldn't it be nice? Why don't we? Oh, if only we could. You know, this is one of the things I notice about our society, it's very clever over history, is that we've made this very basic thing that we all do into something really elevated on the one hand, and inspiring and beautiful, and on the other hand something which is so soft and spineless that none of us believe it could ever actually run the world. We believe that reality, well, that's nice, and then the reality is this. So what I'm wanting to do, really, myself, is find a way to bring that understanding to the fore, and to find a way to give kindness and compassion some spine, to arm it really, to mean that it is no longer seen as the weak option, but that we recognise it is essential. Therefore, how are we going to spread that? And if we've been touched by Extinction Rebellion and those ideas, and I know you had the talk here from Roger Hallam, which I personally, when I heard it, it changed my life, because it brought together what I already knew in that way that sometimes can happen. It crystallised it, which is that we really are up against it. This is an existential crisis that we're in, and therefore we need to think outside of any box we've already got. We have to have such radical action so quickly that we've got to find a way to step up. We're in a dangerous time. Wherever we go, it's dangerous. If we pretend it's not happening, it's dangerous, because we need everyone to be part of this. All these people are up against it, and we are, although we have this slight privilege of some time and some slack still. And I think we need to use that now to explore how to put kindness at the centre of what we're doing. And I've said that I think there are policies. I'm not going to go into them because we could disagree about the details. We've recognised, I think, in general, that people would need to get together and talk. But the issue is, why is that so hard? And I know, as someone who's been involved in Green Party politics and in other things, I know in a lot of the direct action struggles, I know how quickly, and you can find this out for yourself by simply going onto Facebook and watching, making any comment about anything that's happening in the world, and seeing how quickly it is before that degenerates into somebody, into an us and them, between you and someone else, or between some other people on there. And how quickly it moves away from any respectable listening You know, we're finding it really hard to be kind to each other. And that's because we're under stress. It's also because of the nature of social media. It's also because we're being manipulated. It's also because, as we found out, that whole thing of negative and positive news has been exploited by social media because it engages us, it keeps us on social media more. And once that was discovered and they monetize social media, then boom, we're into this mess where actually that's now, the algorithms are selecting for our distress. You know, the algorithms are selecting for things which will stimulate us and make us angry or make us ecstatic or whatever. They're stimulating us all the time. And that whole system, we're engaged in it, and obviously we're struggling with it. And I'm sure that given time, we'll find a way. Eventually we'll pull that in and we'll have a way to deal with it and control it. But we don't have it right now. So what I've been training myself to do and challenging myself to do is never to assume, even on the positions that I'm sure I'm right about, is when somebody says, is to keep checking that. Keep checking it. Never assume. You know, and not be afraid to do that. And maybe that's the key thing that we all have to work on, is why are we afraid of that? And I think there's all sorts of things we can do to work on that, and you find your own way through. I'm afraid when a woman challenges me about my sexism. There's a bit of me that really doesn't want to admit that I still could have it. This isn't about following righteous feelings anymore. This is about how do we get out of this minefield by creating cooperation between us. We have there's no luxury of being self-righteous as you go down with the ship, because everyone will go down. I've got to find a way to connect with the maximum number of people and to create some kind of culture, politically and socially, where we can all say, okay, I trust you, you trust me, we'll get through this. So that when that real emergency is hitting us, that's hitting other people in other parts of the world, when it really is, there's people coming, I don't know if we've got enough food, we can actually try and figure out a rational way to deal with that situation. And what I think is the revolutionary thing about the kindness that I'm talking about, and I had to do all this preamble, but what I think is revolutionary about it, and it has been ever since it was first stated many thousands of years ago, people have realised it, is that I treat that person with kindness, however unkind they are. And I think this is the challenge. That sounds like a spiritual or a Christian thing in our culture. It actually is the challenge. And I think it's actually the winning tactic. And I'll tell you why I think it's the winning tactic with all people. And I've been experimenting with it on social media and stuff. Is that when someone comes back at me with something, I'm going back to them, I'm giving them a bit of space. I'm thinking, okay, you just made a really racist attack on me, or comment. I'm going to tell you that I didn't like it, but I'm not going to other you. I'm not going to say, you fuckwit. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to find something about you that I recognise as human. I'm even going to compliment you on that. And I'm going to tell you what I don't find acceptable. And that it is never acceptable. And if you see me acting in a human way towards you, it makes it easier for you. So what I thought was, we've got basically sociopaths in control of the planet. A very small number of people. And then a whole load of people who are feeling very distressed and confused and hurt, and whose instinct is to make sure they look after their own, however big they're able to make that net of identity that they're, you know. But even if we manage to make it like all the people who are subject to these sociopaths who are destroying the planet, that's not quite fair. We have to be honest about it. We're all destroying the planet, but we're part of that system. Even if we're really ready to change that system, how would we get them to give up their power? How would we overcome them? And I think that everything I said is that's got to be the basis then of how we strategize. But it's about being realistic. It's not about being soft. People are afraid of the anger that's coming at them. So I think it's not about anger. When I'm dealing with the police on the front line, I've had a lot of experience with police in different front lines. I've been very lucky because I've been in this country and I haven't been shot at. I've only had guns pointed at me in Palestine. But even there, and I was in a privileged position because I wasn't a Palestinian, and therefore I wasn't being treated by the IDF quite the same way. So I did have some, it made it safer for me, but I used that safety, which is what I think privileged people should do, and we're all privileged in this room, on this planet now, used my privileged safety to take a bit more of a step and push more at the line, and to say, look, I know that you're a human being, and to make them laugh about it even. Say we're just the same. Find those points of commonality. Refuse, however angry the person is, refuse to engage in that. Sooner or later, you know, those forces that are against you, I believe we may crack them if we have genuine non-violence. By which I mean a firm attitude of holding a line, but a clear attitude of, I don't hate you. It's not thinking that you're any better. And I think that's the other key thing that I'd like to say, which I think is the work that we all have to do, is that I am no better than anybody else. And I quite often, I'm reminding myself of that in random places, at checkouts, while driving after someone else has just cut me off at a roundabout. You know, I notice that I do that too. That I am literally no better than anybody else. And I keep exploring that and making myself examine. But let's try and create this culture where we recognise, and I don't know how we quite, this is your question, I don't quite know how we bring this into the focus of what the words are, because the words have been devalued, love, compassion, kindness. When I say devalued, they've been turned into this special thing over here, which is so lovely, but so unrealistic. And what I'm saying to you is, there is no other way out of this situation now. Kindness to all species and all people has to be compulsory, because if it isn't, we will fight and we'll die. Thank you for listening. I hope it's given you some stuff to think about, and I hope that some of you will come and tell me what you think afterwards. Thank you.